Thank you. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We are always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes an opportunity for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We hope that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. Thank you for attending.
As required on the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 1046 et sequentia, adequate notice was given for calling this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, and the Times, the Trenton Times, on January 6, 2023, and distributed to the schools and others on the standard distribution list. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. Board Policy 2230, recording devices, requires that we inform those attending this in-person meeting that the proceedings are being recorded. This meeting is being live streamed. The representative of the sending district is authorized to vote on such matters that affect sending district students or affect the governance of the Princeton Public Schools as more specifically designated in NJSA 18A38.8.1. In the event that this statute is amended, the law shall take precedence over this bylaw. Sending district votes pertaining to personnel actions refer to high school, central administrative, and district-wide staff only. Votes otherwise are considered abstentions.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Daphne Kendall.
Here.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Present.
Betsy Baglio.
Here.
Beth Barrand.
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld.
Here.
Jean Durbin.
Present.
Mara Franceschi.
Here.
Brian McDonald.
Present.
Susan Cantor.
Here.
Rob Christopher.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Tonight, welcome to our meeting tonight. Tonight is our budget tentative approval. And we thank you for attending. Sorry, I'm having computer difficulties. Just stand by 1 second. Getting it started. Great, thanks. First, I wanted to take a moment to address an issue that has been circulating via email with regard to issues concerning school safety and security. The safety and security of students and staff is the highest priority of the board, which continually reviews its policies and procedures. If the board believes those need changing, it will act accordingly after weighing the input from parents, staff, stakeholders, and security professionals. It is not a decision that is made by a single person, nor is a single person or entity's recommendation binding. We've read some suggestions that nearly all high schools have either school resource officers or special class 3 officers, and that Princeton High School is somehow the only high school that does not have them. That is not accurate. There are numerous high schools that do not have any type of armed officers, and various school districts have evaluated the risks and benefits and decided against hiring such officers. That is not unusual here in New Jersey. We know that our residents have varied opinions on the need for and appropriateness of that type of security, and reasonable minds can certainly disagree on this topic, like many topics that have come before the board. At this point, the board has not acted to employ either a school resource officer or a special class 3 officer in the high school. I want to make it clear, however, that this is a board level decision, one that the board as a whole would make. Any suggestion that the board has not hired such officers due to the decision or belief of a single administrator or single board member is inaccurate. And then, thanks. Okay. I also wanted to highlight an announcement that Princeton University made earlier this afternoon. Over the next 5 years, they will be providing more than $14 million of support to Princeton Public Schools. This includes an unrestricted payment of $2.25 million in the first year, an amount that will increase by 4% in each subsequent year. The university will also be providing $500,000 a year to support the goals and initiatives of our new strategic plan. And the full announcement can be viewed on the university's homepage. On behalf of the board, I want to thank the university. For decades, the university has been a strong supporter of Princeton Public Schools, financially and in many other ways. During the pandemic, the university helped provide healthy meals to PPS families in need and provided tents for outdoor learning. Princeton regularly shares facilities and other expertise with our staff. Most recently, representatives of the university participated in our strategic planning process, and we are grateful for their perspectives they offered and for their active engagement in the process. Princeton faculty, staff, graduate students, and alumni with children in our schools have been strong advocates for public education, and many have donated their time to serve as volunteers and as engaged members of the school community. I also want to note that while we are different institutions, we share many values, including a shared commitment to excellence and equity. We all want Princeton Public Schools to be among the best in the state and the country, and we want to deliver an excellent education to all our children. Support from the university makes this possible. Dr. Kelly, do you have something you would like to add?
Yes, I would also like to add my extreme gratitude and thanks to Princeton University. And especially, I would like to thank those members of the board who really contributed so much to help us with this really generous donation.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And with that, we will move on to agenda item E, the 23-24 budget presentation. Mr. Bolden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So welcome to the 23-24 budget tentative adoption. We're going to be talking a little bit about our strategic plan, zero-based budgeting that we practice, a little bit about a budget calendar, our overview of our tax impact, debt service analysis, and then some details into the tentatively adopted budget, and then, of course, questions. So our recently adopted strategic plan kept the same promise, we're calling it. It's our promise, which was our mission statement. We promised to prepare all our students to lead lives of joy and purpose as knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate citizens of a global society. We try to make all our decisions, keeping this in the forefront of those decisions. We have 4 goals in our strategic plan that goes through now through 2028, focusing on the early years, age 3 to grade 3, wellness, inclusion, and supports for all, opportunity and achievement for all, and preparation for a meaningful life beyond PPS. We're excited to be working on these strategic planning goals as we continue through this school year. Zero-based budgeting basically takes the premise that we try to build each budget from the bottom up, looking at every individual position and as close as we can get to every dollar being spent. The budget calendar tonight, you see highlighted in yellow, is the tentative budget adoption. If the board approves a tentative budget, we then are required to send it to the county, which is really a function of the state for approval. We would be meeting on April 25th for our official public budget hearing and final budget adoption. We've been working on the budget since early November. I'd like to go over this slide because there's a few things, many things that really make Princeton Public Schools unique. We have a world-class university, which we just thanked in our community. This is obviously very special. We have small schools, especially at the elementary level, with generally comparatively small class sizes. We know that the community values this highly based on some of the long-term planning we did 2.5 years ago. Right before the, I won't say the pandemic. I don't even mention that word anymore. I try not to. We have a large number of student programs and opportunities. We have a lot of support services, including family liaisons at the elementary, middle, and high school. We have a very experienced teaching staff. We have programs that are funded well above the state minimum. We also have generally a higher percentage of our population navigating poverty than most affluent communities in the state and in the country. And we have a strict commitment to equity, which we're consistently trying to improve and work upon. This is a challenging time, financially speaking, for companies, especially school districts and governments. There are some main drivers. One of the big things coming out of the pandemic, we have many more students needing extra services and out-of-district placements. This is one of the major cost drivers, which you'll see a little later for this year's tentative budget. Inflation and scarcity, as a relatively young, aging, maybe middle-aged person, we haven't seen this type of scarcity. I haven't, where we go to the store and, there's one type of egg available. So we're facing some of the same kind of inflationary pressures. Our transportation budget, both contracted services and in-district employees will have gone up well over $1 million in 2 short years. We have pressure on healthcare costs and also the property and casualty insurance, which is a much smaller portion of our budget. We also are focusing on improving our pedagogy. We have a new curriculum and instruction leader this year, Dr. Kim Tu, sitting next to me. So these are really some things that are driving our budget for this year. A calendar are basically a snapshot of the 2022 and 2021 property tax bills for the community. They are identical. The 30% goes to the county, 20%, 21% to the municipal, including open spaces, and just under half the budget to the Princeton Public Schools that we all value so highly. Our school tax levy is really comprised of 2 major pieces. The primary, or 96% of our tax levy goes to the general fund. Our debt service levy is now only 4%. The district did add a referendum by a vote of about 3-1 last January of 2022, which was a good thing. It was a maintenance referendum focusing on maintaining our schools, money going to roofs. We have bids. We're looking to come in next week for slate roof rehabilitation at the high school and siding and fascia at 3 schools around the community. So we have about $44 million of debt as of fiscal year June 30th. The board and administration has been acting very responsibly fiscally in that we had a lot of debt rolling off. You'll see a slide later where we'll go over that. But we are slowly and we're working on our long-term planning and not just throwing back things, onto the bonding that sometimes they like to do so people don't notice that the tax levy is rolling off, but we're slowly ramping up and spending money as needed. So we spend a lot of time working on that. We are subject to, on the operating side, which is the bigger piece, subject to a 2% tax levy cap. There are 2 major waivers. One of those, we will be looking to use some of that this year for healthcare increases that are above 2%. And that is indexed to the state healthcare increases. They have not increased their costs of their health insurance for this will be 4 years, I believe. So this is the first year that that's available. And then from time to time, we have when our enrollment growth, now it's a weighted average enrollment growth. They look at the current 3 years versus the previous 3 years. So it's a 6-year weighted average growth when that goes over 1%. So if the recent 3 years are higher than the previous 3 years by more than 1%, we are allowed to pass through additional tax levy increase above that 2%. So those are the 2 waivers that are available. New Jersey has very conservative standards for school districts. As we've gone through when we've had debt reviews, we have very low fund balances compared to other school districts around the country, New Jersey, I should say. Like I just mentioned, we have 3 debt issues outstanding. The last issue, January 2022, was issued again with a AAA Moody's rating, which is the highest debt rating. So that's something to be proud of. The timing was interesting. You know, that was when interest rates were just moving up. They've come up probably about 100 basis points higher than that right now. So it was issued at 2.75%. They had been at historic lows prior to that. So I think we just got in time there. So that's a good thing. Actually, one of the bonds just matured. We had our final bond payment on February 1st. So there are only 2 currently, as of right now, outstanding bond issues. So this graph shows and highlighted in red what I was previously talking about, where we're over time, as we need to, if we need to improve our buildings, we go out to referendum. So this is our projected change in debt service. It also shows the previous 2 years. In red is that high point of where we've been at $6.6 million. So you can see it decreasing. We are right here. Our fiscal 24 would show a slight decrease compared to fiscal 23. It drops for another 2 years, assuming no new debt issue, and then kind of flattens out past that as of now. So we do have significant room to improve our facilities and increase capacity as needed. This is which some people point out is a little confusing. The basic gist here is that our fiscal year is different than these towns' fiscal year. We are in a June 30 fiscal year end where the town's on calendar. So the tax levy gets split up. People that are familiar are residents in the community that get a property tax bill know they get a secondary bill. And it is coinciding with our adoption of our taxes, which take effect on July 1st. So this basically shows that our tentative fiscal 23 tax levy right now would be $87.993 million, broken up in those 2 pieces as I just discussed, the general fund or operating fund and debt service. The tentative adopted tax levy would be $87.993 million. There would be a proposed tax increase from $1.198 per 100 assessed dollars of property value to 1.237. The estimated tax base as of yesterday would be $7.112 billion. That was a decrease. So far, it's not final quite yet from 2022-23 of just under 2%. This means that in this particular case, an estimated 1.5% calendar year school tax levy increase would result in a 3.2% effective school tax increase because it is over a smaller base. This further goes into more details showing some of the, hopefully you guys can see that. But the average home assessed value of approximately $844,000 would have an increase of $329.97 on their tax bill. Some of the other highlights here, as you can see right here, is that the 23-24 tax levy would go up by 2.9%. Over the last 6 years, the compounded annual growth rate is just over 2% or 2.15%. And those are really the primary things I wanted to show here. It had been trending down. We had very low tax increases in fiscal 22 and 23. So that's a good thing. This shows over 8 years that 2.4% tax levy increases felt more like 1.91%, the effective tax levy, because the ratables had been going up. So the tax increases were over a larger base, which was also a good thing. This shows our general or operating fund tax levy growth versus our enrollment. This is a projected enrollment for next year. We did see quite a sharp decrease during COVID, as many communities did around the area. The operating tax levy increase would be 3.71%. It has gone up and down. This shows 10 years. We have been higher. And like I said, more recently, we had been a little lower. This shows our the same years with our total tax levy growth. So the total increase is 2.9%. The last 2 years were very close. Well, last year was 0, and the prior year was less than 1%. It has been higher in past years. We obviously, our goal is to provide the best academic service we can to our children, and we try to do that in the most efficient, financially efficient possible manner possible. One of the things is, so with this 2% tax cap levy and waivers, from time to time we generate banked tax cap, which allows us to use that in the future. So 3 years after it's created. So this was created in the past by healthcare waivers that we didn't need at the time. The state basically created this so they don't force people to take it all at once. So you're allowed to save it and then use it for 3 years later. You can see that we have right here in the current year, we have $51,688 of banked cap available. The tentative, this tentative budget would create so far right now $181,000 more based on unused health care waiver. So that $51,688, as you can see here, would expire next year if we don't use it. Our fund balance analysis, going back to 18-19, we've had growth. We have been using capital reserve to improve our schools. We've fixed roofs. We've improved HVAC. We put a new HVAC system in the pool, which I think is working well. It was a big investment, but it was worthwhile. I believe our swim team just won states. A lot of excitement over that. Girls swim team just won state, of course, girls swim team. So we're really happy about that. I think they may be coming to a board meeting in the near future. We'll see. Everyone's very happy. But anyway, so we've spent the money on good projects around the district. And like I was mentioning before, in New Jersey is a little different with fund balance. They have a 2%. They try to keep us at 2% of our overall operating budget. So, if we're just over $100 million, that's $2 million, which does not leave a lot of cushion. We do thankfully have more than that in the bank. There have been times when Trenton has had different approaches to education. We've certainly had a pro-education governor the last 5 years, but in other times the state would actually come in and take fund balance away from districts. So you can put it in reserves to kind of shield it and also save it for the future. So this shows our tentative adopted revenues pie chart, which is always helpful visually for many people like myself. 80% of our revenues come from tax levy. 5% come from our Cranberry neighbors. For tuition, 8% comes from state aid. I mentioned our pro-education governor. I'm apolitical, of course. We all are. We try to be. but it's definitely been pro-education. That number has gone up a little bit for districts across the state. The state developed a funding formula about 15 years ago, and then they neglected to implement it. So they basically kept all districts flat for like a decade, and then they've re-implemented that formula, which is actually based on what a model school district would spend. Anyway, they've been implementing that. So districts like ours that have slightly rising enrollments have been getting a little more state aid each year, which does help. And the rest, the big news was Princeton University is now making up 3% this year of our revenue. And the fund balance piece is as I was just talking about, is a forced, we don't intend or want to spend that fund balance down, but it is required to be put into the budget. So this shows our actual operating budget, how we spend our money, the appropriations or expenses that we spend. If you look, obviously salaries here, the big blue section, 58%, benefits, and our charter school, which is one of the things I mentioned that's unique for a community like ours to have, is 83% of our budget. The rest of the pieces, it was, as Kim's pointing out, 0%. It wasn't $0, but it, yes, we were laughing about that. Not that it's funny. And you can see the other pieces here: student services, 4%, energy costs. There's, I think one of the big takeaways for most of us that deal with this, board members, myself, operations committee, administrators, is that there's not a lot left that's truly discretionary, so we really have to use our money wisely. So when I talked a little bit earlier about the drivers, I will go through in more detail to what I'm talking about. We're really here in this chart looking at the big picture movements. The top part up here are our revenues. We're looking at, and I like to look at actual expenses or revenues. So we're comparing the last 2 years. So although our tax levy is looking to go up significantly over the last 2 years, as I mentioned here, state aid has also increased about 16%, which is a good thing. The university and the rest of the changes are mostly based on forced budgeting of fund balance on the revenue side. But here you see the drivers. We have increased salaries. The so the actual 21-22 salaries was planned. It was $1.1 million less than normally would have been. We were able to use some federal COVID funding, but as you can see, we've had position growth and salary increases over that time. We talked a little bit about transportation. Our service sector salaries have come up, so we're able to actually hire people. So that's been a really positive thing. This board has been very proactive and helpful with that. Benefits have also increased. We actually, every year at this point in time, don't have a firm increase from our health insurers. So it's always a challenge to try to understand where we're going to be. One of the unfortunate side effects of COVID, and it has affected, I'm sure, some of the people in this room, is that when people weren't going to the doctors during COVID, there have been more stage 2, 3, and 4 diagnoses of cancer and some other things that had gone undetected. So generally speaking, claims on the health insurance side have spiked up a little bit. So there is some pressure that we've haven't had in recent years on health insurance. We can see here our charter school expense can be kind of lumpy. It goes up and down. We actually, in the current year, in this column here, it decreased. It looks to decrease from the previous actual 21-22. We have 2 counts for our charter school students, one at the beginning of the year, the same time we count our students, which is October 15th each year. And then in June, they do another count, and the students are then weighted. There's a weighted enrollment formula. So the final number, we don't know. We won't know until the end of the year. But we have our estimate for 23-24, which is showing a significant increase. It seems to be every other year where the tuition rate that we pay the charter school, because all charter schools in the state of New Jersey are funded through the public education system. It went up 6% again this year. 2 years ago, it was the same thing. And I just talked about this year, we had the benefit of, well, I didn't say why, but we had a low increase in tuition year over year for the charter school. And we also had the weighted enrollment seem to come down. We've been getting more students at the middle school, especially this year, that have extra needs. So that's actually decreased the amount we're paying the charter school this year. We look at our maintenance and custodial. We've made a concerted effort over the last 3 to 4 years in fixing things. It sounds silly, but it is obviously very important to do the periodic maintenance on equipment. If you buy a new HVAC unit, which we just bought 177 Airedale units, which are those big, they look like oversized, huge refrigerators in the classroom. If you don't maintain the equipment well, then it won't last the expected 20 to 25 years. So that's really important. We want to make sure we're spending our money efficiently, but also maintaining our equipment. Another part of the budget that goes up and down, and I did talk about as a major driver, are, the services for our student with special needs. This was an aberration, actually pretty low, almost about $600,000 lower in fiscal 22. Our actual cost for special services and out of district tuitions was low. We have had an uptick related, partly to the pandemic of students needing extra placements, out of district placements, extra services. So it is a big driver of our budget. But it's important. Curriculum instruction, which we talked about a little bit. We have more active planning on how we're spending our money. We're focusing on our strategic plan and improving overall pedagogy so that we're going to increase that a little bit. Technology was a little higher here in 22 because we chose to not lease some equipment. I talked a little bit before about inflation and interest rates. So that's why it was a little higher here, but we try to keep technology flat. We are potentially looking to spend some more money on equipment through a possible referendum later on. We're going to be having a meeting a week from today to discuss some longer-term planning issues that the district has been actively working on. Transportation costs here have gone up $667,000 in 2 years. So this line below here are the non-salary expenses. So some of the other increases are up here in the salary budget. Athletics looks like there's a large increase here, but we've had a shift recently from an in-district full-time pool manager, and also we have outsourced some athletic training services. So that is the driver on the increase here. And then the rest of the changes are smaller overall and related to budgeting of fund balance. So as you can see, there's a lot of pressure on the budget if the increases are less than the expenditure increases. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. Looking at the tentative adopted budget that we're putting before the board tonight, this is the operating side, is showing the things we're just talking about. The operating tax levy increase of 3.71%. Our tuitions are actually going down a little. They do go up and down. It's, as I think I mentioned, mostly our Cranberry students. And there's a smaller class coming in from Cranberry next year. We never know exactly how many students, but it is a abnormally small cohort in 8th grade right now at the Cranberry School. So it's down a little bit year over year. those are really the primary things. I talked a little bit before about state aid increasing, but that's being basically offset by charter schools. Extraordinary aid, I think I've talked about in a lot in past budgets. We don't exactly know how much that's going to be until around July. We actually put in a grant application every May. It's due around Memorial Day. Sometimes they would have it due the day after Memorial Day, which is always fun. Never could understand that. Anyway, it's based on the actual costs. They call it extraordinary, but high cost special ed, high special ed costs, and it's based on per student. So you really have to go through. It's very time consuming and look in district and also out of district and put in an application for each student and those costs that are applicable. So our tentative budget appropriations, we've been talking about the drivers, the salary and benefits are really driving the boat, the ship, so to speak. And we're maintaining fairly well with our insurance. We've had pretty good history with our workers' comp insurance recently, knock on wood. So other things that really haven't talked about, pretty much hit on all these before. So the total expenditures, $106 million, 248, 199 on the operating side. And this is wrapping up here with the portrait of a graduate as part of our newly adopted strategic plan, which also helps to guide everything we do here. I'm going to open it up to questions from the board at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden, for providing a very detailed and easy to follow tentative budget. We appreciate it and all your hard work on this. And Anthony,
You're
you
welcome.
too. Thank you. So I saw Jean had a question.
Thanks. I have a few, if I could, just because my tenure on the board has enjoyed a relatively flat increase in the budget in the tax levy. So, you know, our responsibility is to provide the best education possible that the community can afford. And I appreciate all your work, and I appreciate the presentation. I'm unclear if categorical state aid could impact the 2.9% increase that you just referenced.
So it was good news that we did was almost 10% increase, I think, year over year with the state aid. However, our projected charter school tuition, really, it was about equal. So, and we are forced to budget for that, that charter school amount. And I don't expect it to be much less than budgeted this year because the tuition won't change, which did go up 6% year over year. The only thing that could happen is the weighted enrollments could be lower, but they also could be a little higher. So I don't foresee there to be any room there. So unfortunately, the good news of state aid increasing, you know, was offset by the amount we pay for the fund the charter school with.
Okay, I thought you had mentioned there's a number, a final number that comes out in July.
Yeah, we'll know next. Well, so this budget, right, will cover through June 30th of 2024. So there's always differences between the budget and actual amounts. So it's always a challenge where there are things we don't know exactly, you know, what it's going to be. So we can't under budget that. We're actually required to budget what the state tells us for charter school, but it will differ. We just don't know if it's going to differ with a positive or negative budget variance.
Okay, thanks. May I ask another question? The 0.9%, you know, we're straying outside of the 2% cap by 0.9%. What does that represent in actual dollars in our budget?
That is, if you can see here, the healthcare waiver.
So it's the actual dollar amount of the 0.9% impact on our budget is what?
Well, we're taking the 2%, the 1.6 million, and then 1,421,000 of healthcare, expenses to be taxed, which is actually 1.71%. But the decrease, the offset is on the, sorry, I'm just going to show is on the debt service. So a decrease here of about 560,000.
But Mr. Bolden, is the 0.9%, is it accurate to say it's about $880,000 in real dollars? I think that's what.
That was my question.
That's what the
Thanks.
question is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'm hoping as a board, we are going to have a conversation about what cuts we might make or measures we might take to stay within the 2% cap or to get closer to the 2% cap instead of a 2.9% increase.
We can absolutely have any discussion you would like to have.
So I'm wondering if we're entertaining measures such as, well, I don't even know if this actually would include any new positions that have not yet been posted, but perhaps might have been approved by the board. So are we putting a hiring freeze in place, for example? Are we capping supplies expenses? Are we capping travel expenses? Are we taking any measures to institute cuts and caps now to rein in spending?
That's a very good question. This budget doesn't contemplate, the only new positions that are contemplated would be through attrition.
But Mr. Bolden, just because, some of us are newer to the process than others, today we're voting on a tentative budget. By law, we have to vote on something today, right? Or the state could come in and tell us what our budget will be?
Yeah, we do have to submit on Monday, a week
Monday.
from yesterday.
Okay. So what's the next step after that?
Well, we do have an operations committee tomorrow morning.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is what I'm trying to say is I believe the final budget adoption is April. Is
April
that
25th?
April 25th. So what I'm trying to help you say is that we have about 5 or 6 weeks where the administration can take the board's feedback and we can refine the budget if that's the will of the board. So the next step is we submit this to the state. The state, what happens then? Do they approve, deny?
How much detail do you want?
A little, very little, very little.
Okay. There's usually some amount of excruciating, painfully detailed comments. Now, generally speaking, they look at a lot of things, but more compliance related.
Mhm.
So it is the district's, purview, assuming we didn't make any mistakes that they find in coming up with the final budget that we can live with.
So then it gets, it's approved. Let's say it's approved, right? It'll be approved by they send it back. And then I guess there's some fine tuning because then we have to reapprove it, the final budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We'll have a little more clarity on our health insurance. I think we had some of course, 4:45, I got a call. I told Dr. Kelly right away. It sounds a little better than originally than's built in here, but I'm still not sure how much movement we can have, but we may be able to. But it depends on the renewals, but we did get some good news at 4:45.
on the health insurance?
Yeah. So I'll go over that tomorrow in operations. A little, good news.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I apologize in advance, Mr. Bolden, because there are probably questions you can't answer. But I guess my question has to do with the new construction and the impact on the tax base going forward. We have a lot of new construction going on in town, and I'm wondering if you have any sense of how that's going to impact our tax base, because I know you had cited that it had gone down a little bit and that impacts the revenue.
Yeah, no, we and you partake in the long-term as a member of the long-term planning committee. So we meet regularly, monthly, sometimes a little more even, talking about where we think and how we think those effects are going to, what effects they're going to have on us. And as we've talked about, and with the demographics, there are conflicting things. People do want to move into the community. We are meeting our obligations for affordable housing. So there is building going on, which looks like we're going to have slightly rising enrollments. We don't know how slight or slow, I should say, they're going to come in, but they are coming. The Avalon 2 or Princeton Circle over off Thanet Road should be having people move in the next 2 months. September, they were, their estimates, somewhere between 65 and 80 students possibly from that development, but their estimates.
PCV also, Princeton Community Village, that development
That's-
ought to be
Yep,
online.
that's
too, right?
almost done,
Mhm.
if it's not.
25.
Now, and the Thanet project is not all affordable housing, however, though that's a
The
minimum.
the Thanet is 11 units out of the 200,
Right, so that's a really small.
11 out of the
Okay.
211.
Mhm.
220.
Okay.
So,
So next year, our tax base will look different.
it will. And
Okay.
a lot of those developments are, pilots, payment in lieu of
Mhm.
tax, payment in lieu of taxes. So it's, the payments go right to the town as of now. We don't get a piece of those. We're always working to, we're looking to work with the town on that. So there are some advantages for developers. They have a known cost and it goes around the county. They don't have to pay the county piece. But I think that this board has been really responsible with, like I said, so basically it was related to the last large referendum, which built the PAC, the new wing at the high school were the primary focus of that referendum. So that bond debt, I should say, had rolled off in recent years, and we're looking to responsibly, increase capacity where we can. The new wing on the high school was completed halfway through the first day of school, much to our chagrin. Elevator inspections are always brutal. So we're looking to see how that added capacity helps at the high school. So I think we're certainly acting responsibly.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the point that we have all this new housing coming online, and
Yeah.
and the revenue coming from it doesn't always come to us. So that was kind
No.
of my ulterior motive. My second question has to do with non-Princetonians who attend the charter school. Now, isn't it the case that anybody can attend, if there's space, anybody can attend any charter school in the state, but they do have, their school district has to pay tuition, correct?
Correct. We actually pay for one student who attends a charter school in Trenton.
So so in terms of who comes into Princeton, we don't have any space though, right? We don't have
The vast majority of the students are from Princeton at the
Right.
charter school, but we are looking to make sure that's the actual case. So we have implemented a new software, which isn't terribly expensive, and we're going to do additional work on. And working on that, the board before I got here, it had been an issue people looked at, and just making sure that it's fair, because our taxes are a little higher than some communities around us. So, we just want to make sure that people pay their fair share. I know Hopewell has at least one student that goes to the charter school. So in West Windsor, there's a few, but we have implemented a Reuters software to help us to, pinpoint, make sure there are residents we're paying for.
Yeah, but for the most part, that the students at the charter school are our children.
Yes, by that, yeah, like 415 out of, they have a capacity approved of 424, which I think was increased about 4 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Debbie was next.
Thank you. Matt and Anthony, thank you so much. Love all your budget numbers. I just want to say, so in 2019, I voted no on the budget for the 2019-2020 because it was balanced based on laying off staff. And a lot of the staff we laid off was AIS. And I know, so for a couple of years now, we've been kind of trying to catch up with bringing all those kids up. And it's amazing because when I realized we saw some presentations from a bunch of the supervisors, but you could really see that when we did not have those staff members, the kids' scores went down and we were playing catch up. So what I'm saying is I love the way we do it now. And so the other thing I'm saying is I won't balance a budget on getting rid of staff because I've seen the effects. So I have a lot of other areas I'd love to look at. But I wanted to reference that because I remember that budget and I voted no. And I also want to remind people that we have full day kindergarten in this town, and many of our surrounding towns don't, which is another part of our budget. So, not in any order, but if I could share with you. Transportation, wondering if we could ever look at tiered busing. Another thing, when we had COVID at first, we asked parents to opt out of busing because of all the requirements. And wondering if that's something we can do too. You know, maybe opt your kid out, it reduces the number of kids on the bus, the whole thing. I don't know all the laws. I'm throwing a lot out. With sports, maybe a little pay to play. I know the cheerleaders this year paid for their uniforms. I don't know why, but they did. And so I'm not always sure why some teams pay, some don't. So kind of looking at that and really looking at maybe reducing overall, because I don't want to get rid of staff, some of our extracurriculars in some way. I'm really throwing this stuff out because I know we have a lot, and I know that's what the kids love, but I also know academically we can't lay off teachers, and I understand the whole inflation. I would love to say no travel for our staff, just local PD or online PD. Maybe charge our students for parking. I would love to cut and limit office supplies and school supplies, and I would love to have a not to exceed on these. I don't know, like we don't need 1,000 pencils. We talk a lot about the PTOs, kind of putting some money into that. And next year, maybe PMS using Chromebooks. So some ideas, because I can't approve something that lays off staff. I just can't go that way. So these are all my other things, but thank you.
Thank you.
We're not laying off staff in this budget, Mr. Bowman?
No, but what
I
I'm
just want to be clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm just saying an example of what happened
Yes.
before. And so I would love to go after all this stuff so that we can find that 700,000. Thank you.
Susan.
Matt, you had I think it was one of the last slides where you showed a COVID number, an actual of $1.8 million that contributed to the budget a couple years ago, and that's now gone. So I'm assuming that's or expiring out. We're using our last monies. So am I reading that correctly as a driver to why?
Yeah, it was actually
Or-
general. Yeah, it was a general fund operating expense. It wasn't balanced with the particular revenue, but we needed to track it. We wanted to track it. There was some misconception by some of our staff at first that it was like, oh, can I use COVID money? I'm like, we're not using COVID money in this particular case. We did get COVID funds, but it was to better track and make sure we're able to recoup any possible grants that we could.
So as that money expires out this year, that's another driver that's putting pressure on this budget. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, the federal COVID grants are expiring basically September 30th, June 30th, 2024. You have 3 extra months there, so they have to be expended by September 30th, 2024.
Another thing, and you don't have to answer now, obviously we want to maintain our AAA rating, but is there a small amount of money that we can pull from our fund balances while maintaining our AAA rating that may help our taxpayers in terms of the tax rate?
We do want to maintain that. Brian McDonald, board member McDonald, sat through that process with us, our financial advisor, and they do look at fund balance. They look at fund balances outside of the capital reserve, because in New Jersey, legally, once we put money in capital reserve, it can only be spent on a capital project. And they do. It was one of the few negatives that we had, and it's not negative. Really, it's the negative of most New Jersey school districts. There are a few that have built up huge balances, but generally speaking, they're looking for like 20% of your operating budget, which would be like 20 million, where we're at about 10 of free fund balance. The 20% seems kind of high too. We didn't quite understand why you
For
would
a
need
school, right.
that much, but it does help to absorb. I think I briefly mentioned something about 10, 12 years ago when the state they took funds away from districts. And I believe Princeton probably had to make some serious cuts that year. I know in my hometown of Montgomery, 2 miles north, they had to lay off quite a number of people that particular year.
Mr. Bolden, can I ask you, do you know what enrollment is year over year? What percent it's increased?
Our enrollment?
Well, generally when in past budget presentations, you've included an enrollment chart. And I know in 2021, was it here? I missed it. I was all the way over there.
We had quite a bit of growth there for a number of years. If you look back from
But I'm
14
saying-
through the peak, the short-term peak
No,
there.
but Mr. Bolden, if you look,
Mhm.
2021, we had 3,623 kids, and we're projecting 3,812 students. And so I'm not a math person, but that's like 200 kids, right?
Absolutely.
Which is about
It was a short-term blip there with
7% increase, right? Over the
Yeah.
2 years, right?
good math.
And did our budget go up 7% over those 2 years? I'm giving you layups. Layups.
Actually, it
Well,
looks
if you-
3.24 and 371, 7.01,
But what's the
That's for the enrollment.
6.95,
but
sorry.
what's the actual, right? Because the actual tax levy isn't going to be 3.24%, right? It's going to be 2.9.
Right, we've had the benefit of some declining capital on the capital side of the,
So even if it did go up 7%, which it didn't, it's a little lower than that.
just the operating side, right?
But the taxpayer sees one bill.
Correct,
Right.
absolutely, we've had the benefit of that.
Right. So my point is that enrollment has gone up 7%. So even if we did go up 7%, we're just trying to address the rising enrollment, and we have to educate every child who walks through those doors.
Absolutely.
Betsy.
I also just wanted to say, sort of along those lines, as COVID money expires, the needs of our students haven't. So we've been left, as you mentioned in this presentation, but I really just want to highlight it, that we have great student needs that are still existing in our schools, and we have to do whatever we can do to help them out. I also would like to say that some of these extras that we spent less on during COVID because we couldn't have athletics some quarters and we couldn't have some extracurricular activities, they're back and more kids are involved in them, and that brings joy. And that's what we've promised our students at the sort of outside of the slide. So I wonder, given all of these, how do we look to the future? Both Jean's question of looking to the next month, but then how do we look to the next budget year already to start to think about, we want all of these amazing experiences. We have to meet kids' needs, but is there anything we can do? Are there any levers we can pull?
Absolutely. Since I've been here, we've tried to develop a prospective model where we look backwards and then we try to plan going out at least 3 to 5 years. As we know, with some of the demographics we've looked at, it gets harder to plan out for 5 years. But with an artificially imposed 2% tax cap levy, we do know that our salaries go up more than that, generally speaking. And we've had a lot of pressure on our on the service side of our salaries here for whatever reason they were kept artificially low, and then we've done a nice job, and we've needed to do that to be able to actually hire people to clean our buildings, to be instructional aides. In fact, last January, we had to last minute do an increase because our transportation aides weren't going to be making the state minimum wage. So we had to increase that to $13. And then the board has recognized that and made some changes. So there are, it's really important to plan moving forward. It is
Well,
very important.
no, but are we, would you say that we're the highest paying school district in the area?
Depending on.
We were saying that we had to raise salaries
We
for
were
our.
extremely low on the
Yeah.
service sector. So our
Yes.
custodian, generally speaking, the starting salaries were extremely low. We were trying to hire instructional leads at 21,000 less than about 18 months ago.
Yep.
Because full-time custodians who work 40-hour work weeks at 28,000. less than 2 years ago.
And I also want to just point out that we have an amazing relationship with our teachers union. And we last year approved a 5-year contract at 3%, which I understand is below the county average. So yes, it's over 2%.
I got many calls from throughout the state saying, how did you do that? So it was the timing was good, but it was a fair contract. It was good.
Right. And is anyone doing 2% contracts?
2%?
Yeah,
No.
because that's the tax levy cap, right?
No, no one's doing 2%.
Beth?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. Is this working? Is this on? Lights on.
Yeah, I don't think it's working now.
Just to follow up on that general conversation, I think it's important to go back again and look and say 58% of our budget is salaries. We are very fortunate that we have good contracts with our labor, and we're better off than many of the schools around the state. There's a lot of crises going on this year at budget time of other school districts. I know that we've talked to some of our colleagues, and people are making cuts. People are not able to figure out how to keep going. And I think we're really fortunate, and in particular because Princeton has come in, and that has really helped us. I must say, personally, I was a little bit, when I really saw the numbers, I was surprised, and I thought, I thought that Princeton was going to give us a little bit of extra. But when you really look and drill down as to what we're doing, 58% of our budget is salaries, which were up 12%. Benefits are 17%. They were up 17%. We get a little bit back from the state there that we can tax, but none of it makes up for that. So we have kind of an ongoing, structural budget gap, which we've had for years. And when I first got on the board, and going back to what Debbie said, it was first year on the board, we made cuts, and it was really painful to be part of that process, feeling, we didn't really have our arms around everything, and we had to let people go. And you came in, and I'm so grateful to all the work you've done for us, because you've taken the budget and really made it transparent to us, and I believe the community. And I know you've been working on that 15% of the budget that's not salaries and benefits, and you've been squeezing, and we've had the benefit of that. We've also had the benefit of COVID coming and dropping the enrollment, and then suddenly all that federal money coming. So I feel like we're back to 2019, because we're back to the reality of the fact that we want to offer the best education we can, but we do have a structural gap. And so to kind of go back to what Jean said, my question for the administration is, how do we think about this? I understand where we are right now, and I'm concerned about the cost, but there's not a lot I feel like we can do. And I think we've done a good job to the extent we can control it. But we look ahead to next year, and next year we're going to have, we always think it's about $700,000 to $1 million of a gap, right? Every year we have to find that money because we have to make it up. We can't tax for that amount. So my question to my colleagues and the administration is, how are we going to work together this year to think creatively about how we address next year, so we don't have the concern that Debbie raised, where we have to look to the bone. We don't want to cut things. We want to keep going. We want to fulfill our strategic plan. So I would hope that we can, maybe on a bi-monthly basis, maybe in the operations committee, maybe in personnel, I don't know where we want to talk about it, but I believe we should have a conversation this year to be really realistic about what we're going to face in the next budget season, so we don't have that kind of just dropped on all of us, and figuring it all out at the last minute. So I hope we can have that conversation. And I also hope it can pervade our conversations about planning, because again, we're going to have a conversation on the 21st. The public is invited. It's the long-term planning committee. We're going to talk about the challenges in front of us, what we know, what we don't know, and the pace at which we're going to try to address some of the things. But as we think about planning, we have to think about this budget thing. We're responsible for ensuring we have the funding to educate the children of this community, period, right? We have to do it. We don't have a choice. We've got to do the basics. So I hope that we can be thinking about this throughout the year, all the aspirations we have, but also the funds have to be there. And it's kind of I've used the word magic before. I hate to use that word, but I look at it and I think it's a real challenge, and it's going to take all of us to address it. Thanks.
Any other comments from the board?
Yes, I just wanted to echo Beth's comment that if you dig deeply, there is a significant structural gap, and it's probably in the range of $500,000 to $1 million a year, as we have compensation expenses, which if you net out charter together, they're 83% of our entire budget. So with those growing at somewhere between 3.25% and 3.75%. Is that about the range, Matt?
Yeah, typically, well, we talked a little about scarcity. It's harder and harder to hire teachers. So we used to get more breakage, which is the difference between a first-year teacher and a retiring teacher. But that's becoming, less and less.
So for the board and the public, I just want to focus on 3 challenges. I think Matt did a good job of outlining where we have more revenue and less revenue, and where our expenses have largely increased. There have been very few cases where they have decreased, so I won't repeat all of that. But I thank you both for putting that detail in there. But in addition to the structural budget gap, we have the question that Jean raised, which I think deserves at least some discussion of whether this board is okay with 2.9% this year, or whether we should be tasking the administration with coming up with some possibilities that would allow for a smaller increase. And that could include using fund balance, which creates other challenges. And then the third thing I want to note is that some of the tax increases, the effective tax increases, have seemed small for 2 reasons. It's not primarily because we've dramatically restrained spending. It's because we've had debt coming off for capital projects, 1. 2, we've had federal resources, to support us during the COVID years. And 3, we've had a growing tax base. This is the first year, and some year it hasn't grown. So there was a great slide that Matt put up that showed that we averaged about 2.5% for a number of years, but it fell to taxpayers like 1.9%. That was it, that bar chart. Yeah, 1.9%. But we know that our facilities have been under-maintained for decades, and we've done a lot of work to catch up with some of the maintenance, but we're not completely done. We know that some of our facilities are very old, with parts of the high school dating back to 1927. And as a board and as a community, we need to be thinking about how to make sure our teaching and learning spaces are most appropriate for how we teach and learn in the 21st century, which is very different in many ways. It's different. It should be different than it was 100 years ago. And then the third thing is, and we're going to be talking about this on our meeting on Tuesday and in upcoming meetings, is the challenges that growing enrollments, pose, and whether or not we will need to expand our facilities at any school levels, whether it's classroom facilities or core facilities like cafeterias or gyms or counseling offices or nurses' offices, to deal with rising enrollments. So when you put those 3 things together, there's going to be enormous pressure on the budget and enormous pressure on taxes. And so I just want to note that, and maybe I'm rambling on, but this is a real challenge for us on the operating side and the capital side. And we could see very significant increases in the future if we were to go to the public and say, in order to address the capacity, we need to ask you to approve a construction project. That would add to the 2% and any waivers that we get in a given year. So I think Jean's question about this year is a very fair one, which we can choose to, ask the administration to come back to us with some options. But there is not an option. That's something we can choose to do as we go forward in the next year. It's not an option. We have to look at every position. We have to look at every expense. Debbie mentioned quite a few of them. And we have to ask ourselves, are those crucial to the delivery of an excellent and equitable education for our school children? And if the answer is ever no, that expense has got to go.
All right, well, thank you, Brian and Susan. On behalf of the board, we thank you both for your leadership, and we look forward to how you're going to suggest that we address that structural deficit. Next Tuesday's fine. No, I'm just kidding. And our meeting next Tuesday is a long-term planning meeting. It's not essentially a board meeting. The only thing we'll be discussing is how the board is going to proceed in the short term and the long term with regard to the rising enrollment. And Mr. Bolden did allude to some technical upgrades that we might propose to make in a referendum, and we will discuss that next week as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions before I open up to the public? Jean?
When is the time to make a motion?
For what?
I would like to engage in discussion about whether we're tasking the administration with further work to reduce the tax increase.
So how about we go to public comment, and then before we vote on the consent agenda, we can have a discussion there. Does that sound good?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So members of the public, as we said before, we value the input of members of our community on any topic. We have one public comment tonight, which is now, and you can come and talk to us about anything for plus or minus 3 minutes. Please just state your name and the street that you live on. And please keep your comments civil. We cannot talk about personnel matters, and we won't comment on them. So if you would like to speak, please come up to the podium.
Hello.
Hi.
I am Violeta Medina. I live in Stanworth Lane. I come here very concerned and distressed when I learned that it has been talked about introducing English-only track in Community Park. I think a board like you that is so committed to education can only entertain this idea because you really don't understand the detrimental effects that will have in the DLI. The DLI is a program that doesn't only give you a bilingual environment, it gives you a bicultural environment. If you introduce English only, it completely bursts our immersion bubble. This was a program that has been taking years to create, and now if you put English only, it will destroy the community. And we are not making an educated guess of what will happen. We are talking about memory, by the memory of the parents from other students when it was introduced. And what happened is that it created two communities within the school. So I think it's really unfair for the student, both the DLR and the students, the English-only students, that they face a school that is fragmented, that is two communities. It's really emotional to feel the support that the DLL program has given my children. But what it really touched my heart is all these English-speaking parents that they put all their time and commitment to come and learn another language, to learn another culture. This is really diversity and inclusion at its finest. You can try to teach that in other schools, but our children are living it, are the living embodiment. This will be a generation of children that will be tolerant by default, not by something, this is the normal for them. And once you understand about other cultures, you are tolerant about everything, about religion, about ethnicity, about sexual preference, because you have changed your mindset. Unfortunately, it's not a mindset that I grew up with, and I'm learning from my children how open and how normal for them is to be accepting other children. I think if the problem is that community park has more capacity to introduce more children, the community parents that we are all here present, like this is only just from one parent telling us that this was happening 24 hours. It's just one grade. We are basically all from the same grade that we heard about that. If you want to show that we show you how opposed we are, give us time, just 2 days, 1 week, and we will bring you the whole school. Of all the parents that understand, we understand, we are living it, and it's a struggle. The problem with bursting the immersion language is that all our children, even the I speak only Spanish with my children, but it is a struggle for them. They are frail, like they are surrounded by the dominant culture and language, and it's very easy for them not to make that effort. Like the children, both from Spanish and non-Spanish homes, are doing a tremendous effort. And they are children. They are, if you introduce the English only, the character of the school will change. All the conversation in Spanish, in the corridors, in the playground will stop by their own good behavior because they are polite. You get children that doesn't speak Spanish and you switch to English, and that way it will destroy completely the program. And I think it's the parents can help you. I think this Board of Education is extremely committed to equity, to diversity and inclusion. And I think we can help with the issue. If the issue is that we have to enroll more people in the DLI, so those numbers come but naturally in our program, let us help you. Like I myself only come to Princeton 1.5 years ago, and I am really committed to the education of Spanish to my children, and even I hesitated to enroll them. Why? Because I go to the presentation, the official presentation, and professionals tell me that this good is how they do it. But of course, like, it's their job. I don't have the input of all the parents telling me, this is how we did it. This is my family, like yours, and it has worked well. You can be safe in the knowledge that you are doing something good for your children. And we have a really diverse community. We have English speaker, first generation immigrants, second generation, and a large community of people who speak a different home. They all benefit from it. And I think we will have like a race. We can raise an army of volunteer parents to every person who can conceive the idea of sending their children to the DLI. We will match with a family exactly like theirs so they can share their experience. So they are not stopped and they don't hesitate because they don't have the right information. It is really hard to do this. Like the English-speaking parents, they are really brave and generous of doing that commitment to another language. And we want to show them that it works, that the children not only get English and Spanish, like there are all these kind of official, kind of known cognitive and developmental benefits, but they can see their children really how they behave, how they are really tolerant, how they speak both in Spanish and English. And it's really a beautiful side that we really need to provide. And I want to share this gift that the Board of Education has provided me and my family with as many families as possible. I want that to grow because it benefits everybody, and especially the community. Like these students that will go out will change the way that the society works.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. If you could just please limit your comment to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Pereira. I'm on Jefferson Road. So I just like to thank the board for even initiating the DLA program. It's a truly innovative program. It is to the core mission of making our children the next generation of leaders and global citizens. It helps with their cognition. It helps them learn another language, and learning language is how we all communicate and connect as people. Now, I'm here to talk about how we preserve and improve the program for our students across the district. It's critical that we continue to nurture and make careful decisions about how we resource these schools, how we manage class sizes, how students are put together. The program is hard. These kids are small. And, we don't speak Spanish at home, and we have to help our kids do our homework, and we've got great staff and great faculty helping us get through all of it. But why it works is that these children are amongst an entire school community where they are fully immersed. And I'm concerned about introducing an English cohort where I think we've made a deliberate effort to make it a wholly self-contained community. Because I think that the English students, if they come in, will be unfortunately segregated in some way, either intentionally or otherwise. It will add stress to the staff and the teachers who now have to manage additional resources of dual language within the same school, in an elementary school where learning is really, really critical. And I would just want the school board to be cognizant of that as you think about planning and resources across the district. Again, I thank you all for your support of the DI of the program, but please continue to nurture it so that when they leave Community Park even, and they enter the middle school and they go to the high school, that the resources are still there and that they can continue to grow the program throughout the schools. But make sure that it's nurtured and secured where it's originating so that it can be successful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shen Cha. I live in David Bradley Court. Today, I have a child in 9th grade with Princeton High School and the 7th grade in Princeton Middle School, and we moved to the district like last year. And after witnessing what's happening in the Princeton Middle School in the math education, I feel like compelled to voice my concern on the direction of the math program in the district. I'm going to break down the situation into two categories. First is the lack of direction and the plan in program offering. I feel like the district could have done better in meeting the needs of students of different interests and encourage students to pursue math that would maximize their potential by offering more flexibility in course selection. Take the summer program example, right? I mean, it's intended to give the rising 9th grade students the opportunity to learn new subjects that some neighboring school districts actually already offer in a regular school session in the middle school, right? I understand, I mean, not every student needs to take on these subjects prior to entering the high school, but why not just offer it during the regular school semester and give back the free and relaxing summer to those students, right? Instead of holding over those students in the summer who chose to take those classes. Next, I want to touch on the math club and math competition. I have long held the view that good educators help students learn the subject and spark their passions. But what I have actually witnessed is math clubs were reluctantly launched at the urge of parents, and instructions in the club were given to students that would only dampen students' passion for the math. Take my child example, who's passionate about math in the 6th grade, but now he just stops going there, attending the club after a few months. Right, so what's the consequence? The consequence is like we have either stopped participating or not done well in some popular math competition, right? For example, take this as math count. We won the most improved team award. It's most improved team, not the best team, right? And also, a lot of PMS graduates are often behind the students transferred to Princeton High School and could not take certain courses until 11th grade and even 12th grade due to not meeting the prerequisites in math. Second category is lack of transparency and communication. I feel like this district could have done a better job in keeping the parents and the students informed of their options. Parents often had to reach out to the school and even district proactively to learn about more about the opportunity in the math education, right? Take my child example. We were never told by the school or district that the PMS offered advanced placement for math and enrolling into the school. And I didn't learn of the availability until recently through my child, who learned from his classmates. So, so that being said, I think the most frustrating thing is the communication channel seems not as fluid as it should be. Parents' emails were slow to be answered, if not ignored completely. So my question for the board is like, what is the vision? What is your vision for the math education in Princeton? Right? We are talking Princeton. We are talking math, the cornerstone of any STEM program, right? We could have done much better in creating an environment for students who live up to the potential in math and in STEM in general. This is pretty much what I want to say. I just want to bring attention to the board members and the issue in the math education, and I hope it could be addressed.
Mr. Yu?
Thank you.
Mr. Yu, if you wait, Dr. Tu, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, who has oversight of the math program, I don't know if you've written to her about your concerns, but she's here now. So Dr. Tu, did you have something to say?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Mr. Yu. A couple of things. One, we've posted some communication. We have a math placement night at the middle school coming up on the 23rd, which is next Thursday, because we are trying to bring more transparency to the program. So we've heard that from the community, and so we are trying to be more proactive and reaching out about options at the middle school level. When we talk about advancement, that was shared last summer about Algebra 1 for rising sixth graders. That will be communicated all through our math placement night, which is a webinar. And if parents or families can't make it, it will be recorded and posted on our website. So it's open access to all. If you won't mind emailing me about the math competition, because I'm kind of unclear about that piece. But something that you said did spark something here. So Princeton University only is really for seniors, but because of the acceleration of our own math program, it's for juniors and seniors. So we send more students to Princeton University because it is in our backyard than any other local district. So we are not hindering kids to getting there. They do get there and they are successful there, and we are very proud of the students that we send there. The other thing when we talk about options at the middle school level, we are ahead of the game when we look at other public school top districts like West Windsor, Montgomery, that students are able to possibly start with accelerated geometry in the summer, pre-calc as a freshman, which is a junior level course. So more of these conversations obviously need to happen, and I'm excited to offer the math placement night coming. Also on the board's agenda at the end of March, we have selected a successful candidate for a math program evaluation. So this is someone who is outside of our school district, who is an expert in programming, course sequencing, standards alignment, instruction fidelity to those standards, who will come and conduct focus groups with the community, of folks like yourself, taking surveys of students. They'll be doing classroom walkthroughs. They will look at our curriculum. And that process will probably take from April to September or October. And that report will also be transparent and will be presented at the Board of Ed and will be posted on our website. So we are paying attention to it. And I think it's a work in progress, as you were saying. And we hope that we can have more of this dialogue.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, what I have just read is about what has happened in the past year. Like maybe my case is an isolated case because we transferred to the district last year.
Okay.
So we were not aware or were told by the school that there's a placement test available, right?
Yes.
So what happens is that right now, like my kid is passionate about math and there was a top student in the sixth grade. So he repeatedly came to me asking to transfer to the math accelerator class, right? And send an email early Monday morning. And I haven't received any feedback yet, but I will.
Yeah, Mr. Yu, I'm going to connect you with Dr. Tu. You sent us an email earlier today. I'll connect you with Dr. Tu, and she'll be able to address any concerns you have.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tu. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Kip Berman. I live on Birch Avenue. It deeply upsets me that the dual language immersion, a small but meaningful gesture in but one of our 4 elementary schools towards dismantling the generational white supremacist biases of this community, is under attack. My family bought a home in this district near Community Park Elementary School specifically, so our daughter, now a first grader, could have this incredible opportunity to spend half her day learning Spanish and for it to be normal. She's never balked or thought it odd because all of her friends are doing it too. She loves knowing things I don't know and lords it over me. It's awesome. She loved her kindergarten teacher, a truly exceptional educator, Senora Tanakawa Brown. And while she has some challenges in school, it's not Spanish language. By allowing Spanish language education to be, quote, optional at Community Park, it essentially says that as a subject, it is less than or less important than, quote, real learning. Why is genuine engagement with another language and in turn, another culture seen as optional? There are 50 million Spanish speakers who are our neighbors in the United States alone, and nearly 500 million globally. Why is understanding that you can learn in another language seen as boutique or trivial? If my daughter turns 18, knowing Spanish somewhat fluently, she'll have learned more in school than I ever did. I know the capital of South Dakota and have a vague idea about the Monroe Doctrine. And admittedly, that serves me well at trivia night at the Ivy Inn, where I'd much prefer to be this Tuesday evening.
Me
Tater
too.
tots. Education is a passport to the future. And we can't be so foolish as to think in that future, command of a second language is optional. Millions of kids in Europe, Asia, and Africa learn multiple languages as a fundamental and essential, not optional facet of a quality education. American kids aren't stupid. There's just a failing by our culture to prioritize this learning. And that failing is rooted, frankly, in a white supremacist English-only ideology. Let's not pass on that failing to a new generation of children by undermining our DLI program. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak? This is our, okay, here we go. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Hagan, Nassau Street. We have a first grader at Community Park Elementary, our son. He started last year at Community Park as a kindergartner. We moved to Princeton in 2020, and one of the factors that drew us to this community was the robust public schools, and in particular, the exciting DLI program at CP. We reached out to numerous individuals to learn more about the program, and we're sold on the program as being a great opportunity for our son to become immersed in another language and other cultures as a core part of his education right from day one. We were particularly excited that the program appeared to be growing in maturity, with the first DLI cohorts moving on from CP to the middle school, with an expectation that the program would continue to evolve and mature. I personally participated in the parent focus group aspects of the district's recent external reviews of the DLI program. Interestingly, my learning about both of these opportunities was from parent feedback and at the last minute. My sense is the communication effort from the district regarding both of these reviews was rather limited, at least with respect to the general CP parent community. I understand that the district may be considering moving away from bolstering the full DLI model at CP, a model that we've been so excited for our son to be a part of. I hope that the district will reconsider this approach and instead first devote appropriate time and energy to framing and promoting a district-wide vision for DLI education, not just at Community Park, but beyond. It seems to me that promoting and bolstering this program will only help our students live up to many of the criteria delineated in the recently ratified strategic plan, including those of informed and involved global citizen. I felt that one particular passage in the Tri-State Consortium's report after their review of the DLI program was particularly insightful regarding why the DLI program, while successful, hasn't been able to realize its full potential. So this is a quote from their report. Quote, "The lack of vision is also apparent in the fact that there is little to no mention of the DLI program on the district website, no inclusion of the program in the district's strategic plan and profile of a graduate, no clearly defined, targeted, and effective recruitment of native Spanish-speaking families to the program, little to no district communication about DLI for all members of the school and larger community, and therefore many questions across the schools about the level of district commitment to the program. This confusion especially leaves the Community Park administration, staff, parents, and students feeling unsupported and confused about their future. It's my personal hope," that's end quote there. "It is my personal hope that the board and the district will devote appropriate energy and resources into further capitalizing on the strong foundation already in place with the DLI program at CP." Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any? Oh, here we go. I saw you moving. I was pretty sure you're going to get up, but then, you know.
Abe Silverman on State Road. I have a kindergartner at Community Park. I'm very much going to echo the things folks have said earlier. I just want to emphasize one thing, which is it is wonderful when my daughter is around town and she runs into her classmates. They often greet each other in Spanish. And like, that's amazing. And, and she loves to come home and correct my pidgin Spanish pronunciation. And this is something that I think is really unique, and actually one of the reasons that we moved across Princeton. I've been here for a decade or so now, and it really is an important thing. And I'm a little bit surprised that the way I found out about this was partially through Kip at Rojo's in the morning, and partially from somebody else who had a first grader. And like, I'd be very interested in understanding the process, and what decisions have been made, what decisions have yet to be made, how we can influence the process, because it does feel like, from my perspective, a little bit ad hoc. And this is just such a great program, and it really is, I think, an important reason, important part of what drives us here into Princeton, and one of the reasons we really love this community so much. And I do think if we had that dual track, I think someone else said it earlier, the kids are so polite to each other. They are going to default to English if there's, if everybody doesn't have that sort of common core set of education in the dual language program. So thank you all very much, and very much appreciate all the work you do.
So I just want to, Abe, if I could just address what you said. So no decision's been made. We had a meeting on Friday with myself, Betsy, who's the vice president of the board, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Tu, and some administrators, our transportation coordinator, and our registrar. It was a confidential meeting. Information was shared that the board was unaware of. And so I'll just say again, it was supposed to be a meeting where ideas were exchanged, because I understand, Community Park has concerns, but every other school has concerns too. And we also talk about those concerns, but those weren't, I guess, shared. So I just want to say that it was a confidential meeting, and that confidence was breached, and no decision has been made. Next week is we're having a long-term planning committee meeting. We hope to have a recommendation by then, but know that we have 4,000 children, just about, that we educate. And we have responsibilities to all of them, and we take that into account. We really try to do the best for every children with the resources and the capacity that we have. So I just want to share that with you. We really appreciate, Nicole, if you want to come up, please. But we really appreciate your coming out and advocating for the program. We have an excellent foreign language program. My daughter doesn't take Spanish. She takes Mandarin and French, and it's incredible. She's not in an immersion program, but she speaks Mandarin after 4 years very well. So I understand your pride and joy. I share that in a different way, and we appreciate, your coming out to advocate for the program.
Hi, my name is Nicole Hancock, and I live on Jefferson Road. And I just wanted to clarify that it's news to us that there was a confidential meeting on Friday, that I don't believe there's been any breach, or at least not with this first grade cohort here. The way that we discovered that this was being seriously considered was at a PTO meeting that happened virtually on Tuesday of last week. And someone had heard that this might be happening. And so they asked a question during the meeting. And it came out that, yes, this is being seriously considered, and that there's not much that CP parents can do at this point because it's already kind of been decided. And so I think the reason that so many people are here tonight is because it felt like a broadside to the CP community. It sent a shockwave through the, many folks there, really the majority of the school. And we were so alarmed. We showed up tonight, and you'll probably be hearing more because we really want to work with you guys. We understand that there are major issues. enrollment issues, demographic issues, and we want to be part of the solution. But please let us work with you. And we really are in a better place than ever as parents to assist the district with better outreach that's more appropriate, bicultural, bilingual, personal. And so just let us partner with you to help the enrollments at CP. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other? Here we go. How many more people are back there? It's wonderful. It's great to have people at our meetings. We really appreciate your coming out.
Hi, my name is Max Bialik. I'm on Jefferson Road. I have a son who's in first grade at Community Park in the DLI program. I was once in first grade and all the others at Community Park myself. I'd actually like to speak to the issue of the other schools. Excuse me. So that in the executive summary enrollment projections update that was published last month, there's a rather striking graph which shows CP enrollment declining to a level of 236 students. It says stabilizing there in alignment with the 2-section per grade DLI program. This is relatively unsustainable, I imagine, considering that at the pre-pandemic peak, there were 360 students, and on average, it was supporting about 27% of our elementary school students at CP. What I would recommend, or what I would encourage the people making these decisions to do, is think seriously about how to manage these students. It's a program that will lose students as time progresses. Students can join it early on, but they can't join it later. If you do things like cap the number of students who can join at the kindergarten level, the program will never be able to grow, and the school will never be able to support the sort of full number of students that it's required to support. The 236 student number suggests about 40 students per grade is the intended plan, but it could easily support more than that, I imagine. Currently in first grade, second and third grade, there are 53, 45, and 45 students respectively. And if you upped it, say 60 students per grade, you could reach that 360 student level and also cut by more than half the expected rise in attendance at the other elementary schools that's predicted in that, or projected in that report. So I think it should be a real interest in investing in this program early on and making sure that it has the resources available to succeed from the beginning, rather than hamstringing it and preventing it from being able to grow into the full and incredibly promising program that everybody here is speaking from experience that they know it could be. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Good evening.
Everyone, Christopher Front. I live on Birch Avenue. I have a son who's in the first grade. Everyone's extolled the virtues of the DLI program. This is a budget meeting, so I'd just like to make a comment in the other direction. It's from the Tri-State Consortium Princeton Public Schools Consultancy Report. We understand there are questions about the cost of a program serving a relatively small percentage of students. We suggest that abandoning the program and offering native Spanish-speaking students ENL services instead may equate to a similar cost anyway. So everybody loves this program. Abandoning it or diluting it via adding in a second stream might not save any money anyway. So that's all.
All right. Anyone else for public comment? No. All right. Well, thank you again for coming out. As I mentioned, our long-term planning meeting is the 21st. And what time does it start? 6. And is it in person or over Zoom? On Zoom? It's in person?
No, Zoom.
Zoom. It's on Zoom at 6 o'clock. And so Beth and Brian, you'll be co-leading that meeting. Can you just give us a preview and the people hear a preview of what will be discussed?
Sorry to put you on the spot. Thanks, Daphna. Well, let me use the microphone. Yeah, I think we really, we've been doing a lot of work for the last several years, and due to COVID, we obviously did a lot of planning work in 2019 and 2020, and then we were hit by COVID. We had some really good consultants that came in and worked with the community. We had some big forums. We got to hear from people. We've got plans, we've got ideas, we've got all sorts of things, and then COVID hit. And then we went through some leadership transition. So we, on the board side, have been trying to kind of continue the conversation internally and making sure we have data and making sure we really understand answers to questions that are relevant to this planning so that when we could restart it again and really look forward with our new leadership, we would be ready to kind of hit the ground running. Because as we all have experienced now on the board since 2018, it can take from 1 to 5 years to actually get space for students to be in seats. So you can start talking about it and you don't have buildings seats until 4 or 5 years later. It takes a long time. So we don't have a lot of time. So we would like to tee up that conversation again and talk with the administration about what our priorities are, what the timing of that could be, and kind of where we go next. So that's really the point of next week's meeting. And so we will be talking a little bit about the data, but we already saw that data in a previous meeting. And we will be coming back as a board and having a conversation about certain parameters that we think are valuable and important that will inform the planning work. And then we will ask the administration to come back to us with recommendations. Is that, Brian?
Okay. And and there will be an opportunity for public comment at that meeting?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you. We'll move on now to the rest of the meeting. We're going to go on to item G, personnel resignations. And I would just like to say that we're going to vote on the resignation of Thomas Foley and Caitlin Rossi. Their resignations are a loss to our district. Thomas Foley really changed counseling in the middle school, and he was a big supporter of students, and we just wish him all the best. Caitlin Rossi was one of those educators who really impacted kids. She was my son's 4th grade teacher. When he was 9 years old, he was a quirky little kid, and she could not have been kinder to him. So I'd like to wish Caitlin all the best. I think she just had her 4th child. So I want to wish her the best, and I totally understand she's decided to stay home, but that's what kind of the magic of our district is that we have educators that really make an impact on kids. And by the way, my son was in 4th grade 10 years ago, and so it had an impact on me as well. Moving on to, and interrupt me if you want to say anything. G2, retirements. G3, appointments.
Can I just note the retirements? There are 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to them. It's almost 100 years within the district.
Oh, wow.
So it is really pretty incredible.
Thank you. Okay. G4, transfers, reassignments. G5, substitutes. H1 is going to be adoption of tentative budget. We're going to get to that motion in a minute. H2 is travel expenditures. Now we move on to item I1, consent vote. Can I get a motion?
This does not include the budget.
This does include the budget. Does it need to be an action item? It does. Okay, so, oh, no. I didn't know it wasn't going to be consent. So I will move back now to H1, the adoption of the tentative budget. It's going to be an action item. Could I get a motion, please? Michelle? Yeah. Second, Jean.
Can I make a motion before we vote?
Well, now it's time for discussion. It's been introduced. You can talk. You could always talk, but.
I'm not sure of the procedure, but I would like to ask, I would like to ask, in terms of costs only increasing next year, grant money winding down, enrollment rising, we know costs are going to continually go up. We've got our structural gap, fixed costs. I'm asking for us to ask the administration to plan to bring this year's tax increase down to stay within the 2% cap or close to it, and also address capacity planning and staff movement before the next school year begins.
Okay, it's noted. The administration will take that under advisement.
Anybody want to talk about it? Anybody want to weigh in?
I'm just curious, when we say we want them to talk about bringing the levy down closer to 2%, we're going to be approving a budget tonight that is a tentative budget based on what it is, right?
Mhm.
And you're asking then subsequently for them to have a discussion about possibly bringing it down
Yes.
before it's final.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'd just like to repeat my request that we do have ongoing updates, perhaps in the Ops Committee, bi-monthly this year, to think about how we're going to balance next year, because I just think that requires us to be on in everything we do this year to try to make it, because it's $700,000 to $1 million that we have to find this year and next year and next year. I mean, every year we have this. It's not going away. And it's daunting for all of us, but it's going to take a lot of thought and care to make sure we're able to continue to provide the basic services for our students.
I'll just lend my voice in support of both Jean and Beth and what they've said.
Anyone else?
Well, as a procedural note, so you said you have an ops meeting tomorrow, right? So that amount of cuts wouldn't be able to be presented before tomorrow. I'm just wondering, is there a point at which in the next month or so that could be presented to the Ops Committee, or at least sort of a discussion of what was considered?
So the administration would not be able to do that by tomorrow.
It is 8 a.m. the meeting, so.
But yeah, we just need to give them part of the night off. But the committee does meet on Wednesday, April 12th, which is 13 days before the budget approval. And if we need to, we can meet, an additional time. So we will consider both of those requests. One is just to repeat them, to understand what the administration might recommend to be able to reduce the tax levy for the 23-24 year that begins July 1st. And the second is, because of the significant pressures that exist on taxpayers, on the operating budget, and soon on the capital budget, what sort of regular reporting there should be, so that the board feels it's a very transparent and ongoing process of monitoring our financial status.
Thank you. That's a great summary. I added a third prong, which is capacity planning before the next school year begins. Thanks.
We'll be talking about capacity planning on Tuesday, the 21st. So I would think we could discuss that at that time.
So do we need to do a motion to have this happen, or do we need to vote, or?
Well, we're going to vote on the adoption of the tentative budget, but this discussion is being noted by the operations and long-term planning co-chairs, and they've agreed they will take, and the business administrators here, and they've agreed they will take your comments into action.
But just to be clear, voting for adoption of the tentative budget, which is subject to state review and refinement based on state feedback, would be including the net increase of 2.9%. So anybody who's not for that should object. And we will then have two operations committee meetings, the meeting on the 21st to begin a conversation about capacity, and then the final vote comes on April 25th.
Right. Or, you could vote for it and know that it's not final until the April, 25th meeting? So there are two ways to look at that.
Sure.
All right. And with that, Mr. Bolden?
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Jean Durbin,
No.
Mara Franceschi,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Susan Cantor,
Yes.
Rob Christopher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now moving on to, we already went through H2 travel expenditure. And now we're going to move on to the consent vote. Can I get a motion, please? Beth, second. Brian? Oh, Rob. Rob seconded himself. Sorry. I see you down there.
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Jean Durbin,
Yes.
Mara Franceschi,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Susan Cantor,
Yes.
Rob Christopher.
Yes.
Consent agenda passes.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you to members of the public for a robust discussion tonight. Our next meeting is we have a meeting next week to discuss long-term planning. That's on Zoom at 6 o'clock. The Zoom link will be posted on the district website. Then we have our next board meeting on March 28th, which will be here at 7:30 in person at Valley Road. And with that, could I please get a motion to adjourn? Mara, second, Betsy. All in favor? Good night.